We are fortunate to have four ASCE presidents, ASCE Institute presidents, and or past presidents. So what I'd like to do is have them self-introduce and provide perspectives based on the scope of work of their institutes. And we'll start with Shirley Clark.
Thank you, Bilal, and welcome everybody. And I'm glad to see you here. And let's see if I can work technology. Oh, good. So the question we were asked was to address what are the climate needs for the work that we do. EWRI, and Jennifer gave a great presentation on standards. EWRI is not quite as driven by standards, although we do produce quite a few. We do also a lot of manuals of practice because a lot of our designs were actually predate the creation of a lot of standards in areas. And so we have a lot of our work is controlled by local government agencies, but that doesn't mean we don't have the ability to influence those results. So with that, we've actually had several listening sessions to talk to our members and to get feedback. And what they said was they want reliable information that they can go to their politicians and defend. And so what we did with this over the last little bit was we have actually surveyed our members and asked, what do you need and how do you need it? So I'm going to actually go through some very preliminary results of what we're getting feedback on from our members. So again, our uses of climate data, and I want to highlight that, we do everything from water balance calculations to determine are we going to have enough water to have people have agriculture, to have drinking water, and to have recreation. So again, we reservoir supply. We also size all those water transport infrastructures, all your culverts, all your pipes, all your channels. And we also have to take a look at, as part of all of these things, the other components of the hydrologic cycle, evaporation, transpiration, and we do deal with snow and snowmelt. And in there, we also deal with water quality quite a bit. And every one of what I just listed were parts of the water quality issues and driving water quality. So let's come bluntly. We asked our members, what climate data supplied by NOAA do you use regularly? NOAA Atlas 14 came up most often, but right behind it is historical rainfall data. There is still a need to have access to and use historical data, as well as probable maximum precipitation. And showing up was temperature data, as temperature drives a lot of the other processes in the hydrologic cycle, then monthly summaries and climate and weather normals. So we're discussing, I told them, I said, we're doing this workshop. We're going to discuss prioritization of data needs. What are your priorities? They cannot wait for NOAA Atlas 15. That has to be the big thing they're asking for, but also historical data and PMP data. So again, we just asked the same question. So what are your prioritization for data needs? That if you use historic rainfall data, but also to help drive this discussion going forward, what is the resolution you need? And we've gotten away from needing daily or hourly summaries. We're really people starting to get into the design of needing very short-term information, whether that is historic or projected. We're talking 5 to 15-minute data. A lot of people I know who've responded so far are stormwater urban infrastructure engineers, and that's got a very short response time, and we need data that responds to that. So I hope that that also helps inform our discussion, is the timing and resolution of those data needs. And then finally, to tie this up, I just pulled a couple of the direct quotes that I thought would also help drive this discussion. In the modeling, we want smaller return intervals. And with that, we're going to need the data to support that. You know, again, this was one that does more reservoirs. We interested in monthly maxima than in multi-year events. They're pleased that Atlas 15 is going to include 2 volumes. They're hoping that it stays on the published schedule, or actually it would be nice if we could complete it sooner. Because again, everybody's asking for, they're putting in projections of telling clients, you know, and the city might say, increase the freeboard by a foot on the side of a pond so we have some more elevation and storage. Or increase your rainfall by 20%. Or use the 90th percentile value on NOAA Atlas 14. They would like to have it and be able to say in their standards and in their codes, point to Atlas 15 and say, let's go. Again, they would like to see and continue to review the methodology proposed by NOAA. But also what I really wanted to put in there was the climate data, wind, humidity, cloud cover, and solar radiation. So we can begin to look at energy systems modeling and the impact on water, evapotranspiration, and other features that are going to affect our water supply. And of course, if you always give us data that don't apply to NOAA, they would like some stream flows to gauge and river bathymetry data. And so with that, that has I don't think I need backup slides. There are standards. And I'm gonna turn it over to Don Scott, unless Bilal, you wanna go? Good. Don, it's yours. Oh, you can, yes, link at mine. We don't want you guys to confuse us.
Remember, there's 50 people online watching this.
So you think they'd be confused by that? Okay, so as I said, Don Scott and the SEI past president and the vice chair of ASCE 7 Future Conditions Subcommittee that's working on what we're going to do with the data that we get. And Jennifer did a great job of introducing what I'm going to say. Okay, so and a few of our stuff will be there, but we'll look at what we do, what SEI uses the data for that we have. And this is just a graphic that I've used before in the past. But NOAA has their climate science predictions at the 30,000 foot level. Okay, I call it the 30,000 foot level, very grid. Then this partnership that we have between, I call it the SEI, should say ASCE, sorry for everybody else, that I'm thinking of SEI, NOAA partnership there, working together. Does that work?
He's going to turn it up.
Okay,
Yeah.
now it works. There we go. So this partnership is taking that 30,000 foot data and bringing it down to a regional level, allowing us to work together to bring it down to a regional level that we have. And then the SEI committees will take that regional level data and turn it into what is used in the codes and standards that we produce that come. Sorry, Erica. Soon as you hit it, then I can't do it. Okay, Jennifer showed this slide. As she said, she developed it 10 plus years ago, but it shows that ASC and SEI work with the partners, our federal partners, to develop the loads within ASCE 7. And the particularly one, the future conditions one, is very instrumental. You'll notice it's kind of a one-on-one relationship for all of the other hazards. When you get down to the future conditions, it is NIST, FEMA, NOAA, NASA, plus others that are working with us to develop the best data that we have available. As Jennifer said, we're going to take the best data that we have available and to use that to produce the future conditions that for the environmental hazards. You'll notice that the wind, tornado, snow, ice, rain, flood, those are the environmental hazards that we're looking at for future conditions that will go in 2028. What do we need? Like I said, our standards, the SEI standards typically reference ASCE 7. That's why it's being talked about. That's why it was the one that to go. So all of our other standards usually reference the loading provisions of ASCE 7. And so that's the one that everybody's working for. As we said, we rely upon the best information that we have at the time. And then we will, as committee engineers, I think Jennifer said 900 on the committee. We'll go back, thank you. We will take that, what information we have, and we'll do it. We're about 50% of the way through ASCE 728. And like I said, so any data, and we told this early on in this NOAA ASC partnership, we said it early on, we need the data by the end of 2024, first quarter of 2025, that time frame to be able to get it within to ASCE 728. That kind of shocked them a little bit. I'll just say that. I won't speak for NOAA, but I think they're all shaking their head. Yes, that kind of shocked them. As we said, we needed it that early. And so, and then as Jennifer just mentioned, and I'm going to say, stay tuned for her session tomorrow on how to influence 734 that will come up. Our data needs that we have. Like I said, we use extreme environmental hazard data on a gridded basis is what we use to produce in ASCE 7. Like I said, we need it for flood, ice, snow, rain, and wind for the hazards in the US and all of the territories. That's something that hasn't been mentioned a lot. It's not only for the continental, many people just think it's the continental US. It's all of the US plus all of the territories that we need the data for, because that's where ASCE 7 is used and goes into their codes. All of our design standards are used. In fact, to tell you the truth, then many other countries use this for their basis as well. The basis of our future conditions chapter that we're working on is 3 degrees Celsius mean temperature increase during the time frame of 2028 to 2100. Okay, when it falls within that. That 3 degrees C is measured from the pre-industrial data that we have. So 1850, 1880, in that range until now. We're about 1.4, 1.3 degrees C, someplace in that one now already out of that 3 degrees has been taken up till now. And we need the data on approximately a 25-kilometer gridded basis or less. Some of the data could be 50-kilometer gridded basis or less. So it's really fine data that we need to use these extreme events on a basis to go. Backup slides. One thing I'll just say here, and I'll finish up. I'm not going to go through all these, but SEI produces 25 standards, and I counted them up this morning here. I'll just flip through those. You can read the names, or they'll be available to you of the 25 that we do. Out of those, 14 of them will use the climate data that is being developed by this partnership that comes in their design, in their future updates. 14 out of the 25. We also produce, and this is all I could find, we're not a big manual of practice producer, SEI is not. And so I could find 8 offhand. There might be more. Don't take the number of 8 as it, but out of that 8, 4 of those will use the climate data that's produced here. So more than 50% of the standards or the MOPs that we produce will use the climate data that comes out of this partnership. With that, I'll turn it to Norma Jean.
Thank you. So good morning. Let me see if I can drive this. My name is Norma Jean Mattei. I am 2017 our past president of ASCE, but I'm currently the president of COPRI. So that's Coasts, Oceans, Ports, and Rivers Institute. So we are very much interested in what's going on with climate change, because the infrastructure that my institute members steward is impacted by climate change, because the weather is just getting wacky. So before I really start talking about what we use in our day-to-day practice as members within COPRI, I wanted to bring up something that Dan had mentioned in he had a slide that showed a graph actually that showed supplemental spending by the United States. And so back 20 years ago, you might have $1 billion disaster that required a supplemental. This is a disaster supplemental. This is not IIJA or IRA. And those might occur maybe 3 times a year. And now we're seeing them every other week. And there is an interest by this administration, because they've acknowledged that this is expensive, because having to recover from a disaster is expensive, and that community has suffered misery, and that community's economic viability has been challenged, and that can impact it long after the monies in the supplemental are spent. And initially, the supplemental funds were restricted, and I don't know, I haven't followed this, but I'm hoping that they aren't restricted now. but they were restricted to putting back what was there and not what you would put back now, especially when you look at mitigating the impact of climate change by making changes that will make something more resilient, which is what we're focused on these 2 days. So Caroline and Joe mentioned that also, that we have authorizations, we have appropriations, we have supplementals, but we have the ability here to perhaps impact how we that process by the work that we're doing now. So I want to thank my committee members. I am not in the standards end of things, but you see a list right there. Oh, how can I drive and use? Oh, I can't. Okay. So we have 2 standards. So unlike the Structural Engineering Institute, we really operate from manuals of practice. So there's a lot more manuals of practice and actually committee reports, which is a little slight. I think, Jennifer, you showed that triangle. So that's a little bit lower on the list of the requirements and what you have to do in order to call it a committee report versus a manual of practice versus the gold star standard. So we have 2 standards. Dry dock is actually seismic design of piers and wharves. Runa, balloting? Is balloting. So we're in the process of revising a standard and some of the manuals of practice, as well as developing a couple of new ones. So you can see here, when you're talking about what COPRI and COPRI members are stewarding, those are that's the infrastructure. A lot of people live on the coasts, including the inland coasts. A lot of infrastructure needs water, and then we move a lot of goods via water. So a lot of the manuals of practice and the standards are either directly or indirectly. So I was tempted to move some of these standards out, say dry docks, dry, but they want to stay dry. And it's all about this particular standard is all about certification. So try to standardize. So allowing folks that operate in this area to understand where they should be as a dry dock. And so climate change does impact them. Think compound flooding, think changes in temperature, humidity can impact operations of corrosion, how you maintain things. So it's not just direct, because you would think ship channel design, yeah, that might have some direct implications when it comes to climate change. So here is a chart that lists some of the standards and manuals of practice that are either in development. So the XX indicates that it is not a current manual of practice, but it's a new one. So the rehabilitation of waterfront structures, waterfront facilities inspection, a new one, design of low cresting marsh sills in the process of being created. So you can see this, the second to last column lists the anticipated date of completion. So all of these are well within the process of development and may not be able to take full advantage of what we will be discussing here and the work that we're doing, but the next go round can make it within these documents. And I want to go back a little bit. My apologies. I did not add one committee report. So there is within our Ports and Harbors Committee work that has moved into becoming a report, which ultimately I hope will become a manual of practice, and that is the mooring and berthing work that Runa, your subcommittee has done, and now has gotten to a point where it's like, okay, it's ready. So so that did not make it to this document list because it's not a manual of practice, but I'm hoping that it will eventually find its way onto this list as a numbered manual of practice. We do also have quite a bit of work, so I can't really say that any of our standards within COPRI or manuals of practice have 900 volunteer experts that are involved. It's more in order of magnitude less. So you'll have 90, 80, 70 people working on these things, which is still a significant number of folks dedicating their time and effort to developing these manuals of practice and standards or updating them. And we also have we've had two workshops, 70 and 80 people attending each one, some of them the same, some of them different. And that is work that's ongoing for Ming Lui, who is developing changes to the UFC that is used by the Department of Defense when it comes to on the coast infrastructure. So piers and wharfs, and UFC, that's Unified Facilities Criteria. And it also, the work that's being done is not just to inform this UFC, but also the next version of the COPRI design standard for piers and wharves. I mean, a new standard for piers and wharves, because our existing standard is is limited to seismic design. So this will be a more general design standard. So some specific needs, wind loads, sea level rise. So sea level rise, we see a lot of interest and needs across the community within COPRI. Protection levels for coastal, and I'm gonna really read, because the next two slides kind of got a little messed up in translation. Oh no, it's fixed. Thank you, thank you. So so sea level rise, when it comes to the UFC, the Unified Facilities Criteria, sea level rise, so loads on power supported systems, mooring cable orientations are impacted by that. Wind loads, wave loads, storm surge, and tsunami. In particular, what governs? As sea level continues to rise, perhaps you'll see in these coastal structures, pile lengths increase, and then that behavior will change, because it'll be a significant increase in the pile length. I mentioned corrosion, so accelerated deterioration and corrosion as carbon dioxide levels increase, and as temperature and humidity levels increase, we'll see an increase in corrosion, and those things will impact standards. And operational impacts, so where you place your motors, where you put certain things that you might not want inundated. So compound flooding is something that is really of interest. So moving more to the coastal, so precipitation, again, compound flooding, extreme water levels and rainfall, wind and wind pressure data. Sea level rise comes up again. Waves, and I have a note, currently poor data when it comes to waves that are less than 30 meters in depth, and shoreline position and variations in mean high tide lines need more current information and more continuous information, because there are certain shorelines that are simply not, there's not good information that's available to those folks that are dealing with beach and dune erosion, or flood impact studies, or shoreline protection. Waterways. So now let's go into the river end of things. So inland waterways, so locks, dams, channels, training structures, trying to keep those rivers where they're flowing, because a lot of people in industry are operating along there, along the river. And then environmental sustainability. So rain and runoff values, as well as sediment transport are things that these folks are interested in. Ship channel design and operation, again, sea level change, salinity and water temperature. So variables that we haven't been talking about. And then in ports and harbors, seismic design is in, there's a new bulkhead section, sea level rise. Bulkhead, sea level rise, sea level change. We have a whole group working on that. The standards for pier and wards needs mid-ocean data, sea level rise, wind current, waves, and temperature, mooring and berthing, that committee report. needs wind current, temperature, and temperature definitely, and the berthing end of things impacts fender performance. And the inspection of waterfront facilities, increases in temperature and salinity, again, impacts the remaining service life of those facilities. So with that, I think, and I did want to mention that we do rely on ASCE 7 quite a bit, but sometimes that data is not perfect. So 3-second wind gusts, hey, we need 30 seconds. So we have to develop techniques in order to make that modification. So with that, I think I'm going to pass it on to Sissy.
Thank you, Norma Jean. I am trying here.
Sissy, we can't hear you. Can you try again?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, great. Can you see me? Can you see my slides? Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Sissy Nikolaou. I'm the immediate past president of the Geo-Institute. Just a few words about our institute. We're about 13,000 members of geo professionals, including geotechnical engineers, but also engineering geologists and other associated disciplines. Similar to COPRI, we don't make standards, but we have activities that relate to standards or standards on specific topics or activities. And here is a summary for your information. We obviously monitor and participate in the International Building Code and ASCE standards and ASTM international standards. We have a committee, which is the Professional Practice Committee, that identified needs for code standards and guidance documents pertaining to the practice of geotechnology and prepares and cooperates with other professional and corporate entities that prepare codes. We have a very interesting collaboration with DIGS, which is an online standard data transfer protocol of sharing the geotechnical case studies data. DIG stands for Data Interchange for Geoenvironmental and Geotechnical Specialists. And this is available online on our website. It has an organized, standardized manner of collecting data that we think is important to enhance for climate-induced effects. We have a standard of care guidance that is related to the standard of care of geotechnical and foundation engineering, and specific guidelines like the compaction grouting guideline for a consensus on this topic. We have a standard on design of residential structures on expansive soils. And pile foundations, this is ongoing and in collaboration with Structures Institute. And some even guides for homeowners, for example, living with swelled soils, and homeowners guide to maintenance of shallow foundations. So with that, I wanted to share some ideas and needs from a geotechnical perspective on the side of the codes that is not so codes are usually focused on the side that I'm showing here on the right, on the demand side. We're all talking about forces, about hazard, but in geotechnical associated risks to climate, we have the capacity that is affected more than anything. And that is also amplifying our uncertainties, which inherently are very big. So the needs that we have in development of research and moving forward, the association of climate to certain geotechnical aspects include modifications in soils properties and stability of soils, for example, slope stabilities, effects of sea level rise and land subsidence, effects on flash floods and hurricanes, and topographic changes. All of these can amplify or create additional geotechnical risks, something that we have seen in recent events that people do not necessarily associate to climate, which is earthquakes. So in the recent earthquakes of Turkey, Syria, and Japan in the past 2 years, we have seen how soil properties, saturation, topography of slopes have affected the ability of landslides to remain, to be created. We have also seen the effects of floods before and after earthquakes, which is two accidental actions that we typically do not combine in full as they happen. We also have an increase because of modification of the soil's properties and the groundwater elevations due to land subsidence and sea level rise, an potential increase in the liquefaction potential and in the scour, as well as the existing foundations or buried infrastructure and vulnerabilities in erosion and corrosion of existing foundations due to salt water intrusion. We supported a recent report developed by the National Academies of Engineering on exactly that topic for the state of the art. The same concerns on the effects on foundations, buried lifelines, and soils properties for design due to wildfires, permafrost, temperature changes on pavements and expansive soils, and the true life cycle of our foundations and their ability to support critical infrastructure. And from all of these, there is clearly a vulnerability to even having to look differently at more frequent, smaller events, but could have a more frequent nature in their presence. And that combined, all of these can create a much worse cascading nature of the hazards, which I know will be a big topic of our conversations in this workshop and breakouts. So some very specific efforts that are ongoing or need to be enhanced or need to be developed for the Geo-Institute is, of course, our continuous participation in ASCE 741 and collaboration with other institutes like the Structures Institute, definitely COPRI, the Infrastructure Resilience Division have a lot of commonalities with us. We have some of our proudest developments are our publications. That is a popular magazine that is read extensively outside of the geotechnical field. And what you see on the right is our earthquake geotechnics special issue that included these effects that I mentioned of a changing landscape for earthquakes due to climate. And of course, our Journal of Geotechnical and Environmental Engineering, together with our Technical Coordination Council and involvement in academic research and the academia with efforts like USERV. We have a lot of technical committees, but some of them are board level committees where we guide our committees to specific topics. One of them is INC, it's Innovations Committee that aims at promoting innovation, but also innovative thinking in how we deal with geotechnical engineering, and also to incorporate gadgets, remote sensing, and artificial intelligence, large data, for many different effects other than technical, such as engaging and keep enthusiastic our younger members. And I will talk a little bit about how we have guided these committees in items related to thinking differently about codes under the new norm of climate. We have some protocols that are initiated and actually developed by Federal Highway Administration. It's the IDEA program. It's available online and it's specific for earth retention systems. IDEA stands for Innovations, Developments, Enhancement, and Advancements. We support by expertise or financial contributions to major efforts to advance the state of the art and state of practice, such as the National Academy's Corrosion of Foundations report that I mentioned. We are in the process, actually next month in the same locations you are all at Dresden, there will be geoprofession workforce meeting with connecting active geoprofession organizations such as, for example, the Deep Foundations Institute and others to come together and talk about pressing issues such as climate change. We are trying to cross-collaborate with other ASCE institutes and divisions, and trying to have some common ground, and climate is one of the topics where we have common grounds. We have a very active relationship with GEAR and ERI, both reconnaissance organizations that we try to collect data and have them in an unbiased and organized manner. And be involved in activities that are coming up, such as the one on Lifelines Hub that was just kicked off by NIBS. We also have codes, but also beyond code technical activities, and I'll talk about two of them on functional recovery and geotechnical risk-based frameworks. And one frontier where we think major need is there for data and for looking at things differently for short and long-term return on investment on resilience, which is making the business case for resilience. So one of our thinking differently has to do with a GI guide on risk-informed geotechnical decisions. I'm not going to go in detail about this. It's not published yet. It was led by Bob Gilbert at the University of Texas at Austin, and Louis Brio and others were heavily involved. But what we are trying to do with that is have the geoprofessions have a bird's eye view of the risks associated and how this risk can be managed. How much of our testing and data collection is reliable, and do we need more? How can we improve quality assurance, quality control. How can we use the observational method, which is in the heart of what geotechnical engineers do, to support our designs during and after construction? And how can we communicate risk to other stakeholders and clients? This is an example by Bob Gilbert coming from this, where you look at different sources of risk on the left, description, consequences, actions, and then probabilities and cost associated of reducing these risks. And that is very important for our profession when made. We also have guided our innovations committee to have a portion looking at future forward guidelines, and such as the NIST FEMA framework for functional recovery of buildings and lifelines. I know there are many activities in ASCE and other organizations about that on buildings, but with the GI, we are mainly focusing on recommendation 4, which is the design, upgrade, and maintenance of lifeline infrastructure systems to meet functional recovery objectives.
Please, if you'd try to wrap it up in maybe a minute or so. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I have one more thing to say. With that, we want to make the connection to the bridging the gap and collect data about reasonable recovery times, but also improve and use these efforts for bridging the gap from ASCE to update the return on investment in resilience, which currently show 1 to 5, 1 to 3, 1 to 4. But if we add factors of the effects of carbon footprint and other climate related effects, this return in investment, we know that is going to be much higher, and it would help to make the business case of resilience. So these are the highlights from the Geo-Institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Sissy. Sissy, I was trying to make sure that we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A. Thank you all for the excellent presentations. Keep in mind where we are heading in the afternoon. We are going to have breakout sessions, and the focus will be by hazards. And listening to the perspectives coming from the ASCE current and past institute presidents is very helpful as you go in those breakout sessions. So we have until 11:30 for Q&A. And as you ask your questions, we set up some rules. I didn't cover those rules, but to be concise, a question on topic, respectful, all of that, right? These are the rules that we are operating by, and we are open for questions. Yeah. Grace?
Thank you. Thank you all very much for a nice presentation. I enjoy listening to all of them. I have a question for Dan. Dan, thank you so much for great leadership for ASCE 7 new chapter for climate adaptation. In the new chapter, you mentioned we are assuming the 3 Celsius degrees warming in 2080. So I want to ask, what does the committee justify for this 3 Celsius degree instead of a 2 Celsius degree warming? And the other question is a 25 kilometer spatial resolution of GCM data, or you did say 25 or less. So why don't we use 12 kilometer or 4 kilometer? Thank you.
Thanks, Grace. Should work. We'll go with this one. The 3 degrees Celsius in 2080 came out of a climate impacts workshop that was held 2021, maybe 2020 or 2021. Thanks, Dan. And as we met with different individuals, climate scientists and industry partners from around the country, and looked at all the different scenarios that were coming up. One, we can rely upon the scenarios. I'm just going to say we can't use the scenarios as predictions because their scenarios are constantly changing. And so we had to come up with some parameter that we could utilize in the development of the standard. And so with that, we looked at it as the 3-degree would not be an extreme, but it would be closer to the middle, medium of what the projections were coming up with. So that's where the 3 degrees C came from. Then your question on, can we do smaller gridded? We would love smaller gridded. It's just the computational time that it takes to do that smaller gridded data that we have.
I'm just going to add on one thing from EWRI's perspective. I've occasionally, when I've had a chance to talk to our membership and others outside of that around this work, and I've mentioned that SEI is talking about adopting a 3-degree rise. They actually are, a lot of people are really excited about this idea that there is a designer that rather than having to work around the water and the IDF curves on projections around the scenarios, picking that middle number and giving us a line we can pull data points off of, to our members actually think it's much more defensible in a legal standpoint rather than saying we're going to have a range. We would still have a line with error bars, confidence intervals, but we wouldn't have 5 lines. And so that's an interesting thought process even on our side to be looking at it.
All right. Any other questions? There and then Joe. There you go.
Thank you all so much. I'm Heather Brooks. I'm a permafrost engineer and representing the Cold Regions Engineering Division of ASCE. And I just want to echo the fact that my discipline has been attempting to use climate change projections for most of my time in practice. And all of the things that the institutes have talked about are things that we really need for our designs, including ocean temperatures to understand coastal permafrost environments and coastal designs in our thermal modeling, as well as our challenges in other permafrost regions and trying to keep things frozen and trying to make the decisions about whether or not we need to start managing thaw and the mitigations for that. So I echo everything that's been presented up there.
Thank you, Heather. We have about 50 plus people online. So if you have any questions, you could raise your hand or put it in text and we'll in chat. Next, we'll go to Joe, and then which Joe? Joe P. Joe P. Two Joes.
Thank you. It is actually a comment regarding co-development of some of the things. I really appreciate all of the information that was provided. One of the items that was provided, Norma Jean, was on the SWASH versus the USACE Army Corps of Engineers surge data. And I think each of us design some of our tools for the things that we do near term. So essentially flood forecasting when a hurricane's coming or a bad storm. And I would just like to offer or request that we could, whatever the underlying functional need is, let us know. And perhaps there's a step we can take to actually not redirect or, and I'll just offer one of NCI's. We do normals, but we do them on the decadal timeframe, but maybe we need to change that timeline that aligns with needs that would target the Institute's needs as well. So just to offering that we're open to that co-development and changing that. Just because we've done it a certain way doesn't mean we couldn't make an adjustment. Perhaps it's not even that much of an adjustment that would be useful, or that we could work with our Army Corps of Engineers partners to make something that would work better for the institutes. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for noticing that. Because sea level rise, as you noticed, I I had mentioned it multiple times, and there is not there's probably someone from Krell, but I'm not sure there's a core person here that is a sea level rise expert. It is there. That's a hole in what we're doing. And so let's talk about that.
Yes.
Did you want to see about online first? Go ahead.
I can't access it.
We have Brennan Bean. He said that short presentations revealed that different standards or manuals of practice are using similar climate variables, but in different ways. Example, 3-second gust versus 30-second gust. It feels a heavy lift to coordinate efforts within one group, SEI versus COPRI versus et cetera. What are some ways in which we can ensure that climate science efforts are not duplicated when working on challenges across different ASCE organizations?
Great question, Brendan. And I'm surprised it wasn't about snow loads, but he develops our snow loads stuff on there, but he's expanding himself. I will tell you that the one for the 3-second versus the 30-second wind speed gust is fairly easy to solve, and we've actually looked at that one and know how to do that. So there are conversion factors that we can use if we've developed the 3-second gust wind speeds to get to the 30-second gust wind speeds, just by using different conversion factors. So that's the one I'm familiar with, Brennan, of what you've listed there. So I think that's how we have to work together through the institution, through the different standards of what the needs are, and do we have existing conversion factors that we can use. Conversion processes, I guess, is probably a better way to describe it, because it's not a single factor, but a conversion process to take us from one institute's needs to the other institute's needs.
So that's exactly right. So when you have good quality work on 3-second, and then you have a good quality process in place to get to 30-second, when the 3-second changes, does the process to convert need to change? So that's a question.
Yeah.
And I will say, just simply being on the task force and having these meetings has allowed us to have these better conversations through CAC hosting this and bringing the task force together. I hear things from Don, like, wait, we could use that information and drive discussion.
I had a question. I think it's mostly directed at Don, but as being on the future conditions chapter, now I'm hearing from the combined loads chapter. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about combined loads. Everyone else talked about, compound and cascading hazards. But I wonder if you want to comment a bit on that.
Great question, Joe. Great comment that ASCE 7 has developed themselves in silos in the past. And the one that is particular interest is rain on snow. Okay. Right now we have a snow load chapter and we have a rain load chapter, but we don't have something for rain on snow, those cascading stuff. And so as we look at those, we will have to do that. There's some research being done right now with that rain on snow that NOAA has funded for that, to look at that compounding events. And so, yes, there are many more things that we're going to have to look at. It's like when you look at, we do have some compounding events. I say that, I hate to say that, but we do have ice and wind together within the standard. But there are others that we're going to have to look at as we move forward. You're correct.
I would say then the water side, rain on snow is going to be an issue, or rain on frozen ground. Because again, our winter storms are getting even more intense. Baltimore got several inches of rain on top of colder ground in January and February. Normally those are smaller rains and we can ignore them because they still have pipe capacity. But we're gonna have to be looking at these compound issues.
Oh, thank you. We have another question from Ting.
Thank you. I would like to follow up with the 3-degree question. So maybe the question is to Don. I do appreciate and like the 3-degree concept, but I do have I need two clarification. The first one is that, let's say we use the emission scenario, business as usual from like the International Energy Agency, something like that. So the mean business as usual, the mean value is 3-degree, but they have like a range, right? Up to like 4.7 or something like, or lower to 2 point something like that. So the ASCE 7, our code is reliability based, risk based, right? We like the probability, right? So instead of select a deterministic value 3, what's the reason we don't select a proper distribution of like centered at 3 with the boundary? That's my first question. The second is that we originally input for the global climate model is the emission scenario, let's say the radiative forcing things, right? And then we input to the model, we get a range of the temperature. Now, if we select temperature, which means if we use the different global climate model, may even use a different scenario, may get the same temperature. But on the other hand, we have other environment factor impact our loading, right? Environment loading. How would that work? I mean, I guess there is confusion here. Thank you.
Well, the second question really needs to go to the climate scientist side. Okay, and we'll let Joe answer that one on there as he maybe even today at lunch.
I'll be talking about this at the lunch and learn.
So at the lunch and learn today. So I'm going to defer that one to Joe. Okay, on there, the 3 degrees, why did we choose that instead of choosing a distribution of there? Is that we needed everybody to be able to work because it's different for different hazards that you have when you're looking at the different scenarios and everything else that you use. And so we needed a value that that everybody could work around to do that. And so that climate impacts workshop that we looked at, we said 2020 that we held that was what we look at. Instead of using a distribution, we need to be consistent across our hazards so everybody was working towards the same goal.
If I can add to that, a lot of our members and people who are not our members, but a lot of us are around land development. And many of the engineering firms that are doing this work may be as small as in my area, 10 people. And so they're not going to be able to, and the regulators and permit checkers are not going to be able to handle probability distributions and ranges. They really want a number. I mean, some of our people in our state DEP and conservation districts who approve plans are English majors. And they've gotten good training, but we're not going to get statistical distributions. So I think that taking a number and saying this is our best estimate and this is going to land in the middle of the distribution is there, but that is where our land development community is right now. And we have to understand and work with the people in this room and at our conferences are some of our more forward-thinking designers. That's not the bulk of the profession. And they want to permit and they want to build and they want their money and get out.
Just one last comment on there. The 3 degrees C was set for the 2028 ASCE 7. We still need to make that determination for the 2034 ASCE 7. Okay, so that's something that needs to happen now to help Joe define what the research needs are going to be for the 2034. They might stay with the 3 degrees C, they might move to something different. So like I said, that is a discussion that changes because as we get more information, we would set that different temperature as we go.
Yes, thank you for that excellent question and thanks for the response. I'd like to add to that. Think of the 3 degrees as a nominal design value, right? And basically we have those factors of safety that we could account for the uncertainties. So it is a necessary nominal value. We use it in design life loads, we use it for wind and so on. All of them, they have the uncertainties. So I think as engineers, we are comfortable when we need it. That's the only way to move forward.